There's a reason why I wanted to talk to you today, and it's because of China and Ukraine. But let's start with China, because you've recently got back from a trip in which you were in West China, I believe, the Xinjiang part, right? Correct?
That we concentrated. We went from Urumqi to Beijing. So we kind of did the old Silk Road all the way across. But I didn't actually get out of the airport in Beijing because I had to run off to meet somebody in Switzerland at a conference.
Wow, interesting. Why did you go?
Cynthia McKinney asked me to go. She is a professor of political science at North-South University in Dhaka, Bangladesh. She's been there 5-6 years, maybe, I'm guessing, but I've known since she got there. I remember when she left. She has undergrad and grad students in political science there. Bangladesh, people that don't know, used to be East Pakistan and really is part of India. It is a Muslim part of India. You had 2 Muslim enclaves as a result of British colonialism in India. And when they got independence in the late 40s, Bangladesh was the part on the eastern part. Anyway, it's very close to China. Nepal is very close to Nepal, as a matter of fact. It's part of Asia. And the people there have been educated outside of the Western European and North American system. They have a whole different worldview of politics. And they have asked her questions about, because she was in Congress for 12 years here, what is up with the United States talking about genocide of Muslims, Uyghurs in particular, but also Kazakhs and others that are present in China. We know that, as a matter of fact, those people have been in China since before there was Muhammad. So they're Muslims now, but they weren't Muslims when they arrived, and they own China. There's much part of China as anyone else is. And so we don't understand. We know that this genocide and concentration camps and such are not happening, and we don't understand why your government insists on it and why the people in your country don't get it. So she said, I'll tell you what, you guys design a study. This is college after all. You guys design a scientific study, a questionnaire, and a method of doing calculus and whatnot that you do for the final report. And we will go, I'll assemble a trip of journalists and friends and go on the old Silk Road, the path through which the Uyghurs and other Muslim groups in China first entered China, thousands of years, 1,500 years ago. We're going to go stay in Muslim quarters in these cities, particularly in the west and the central part of China. And we're going to go out and interview the people there in the Muslim districts and at the mosques and at the madrasa and different places that people congregate based on their ethnicity. Yeah. And so we did that. And the group ended up just being Cynthia and myself and a friend of Cynthia's.
So the other day there was a GOP debate on Wednesday, right? And it was quite scary because all the candidates on the stage were trying to out anti-China the other one, right? To show that they were the biggest adversary against China, that they will punish China the most. And in America, the mainstream media seem to have gone and run with the thought process that, number one, the Uyghurs are, the victims of genocide of the Chinese government, and that a lot of Muslims within China are persecuted on a regular basis. There's a lot of repression of them. So let me just show you really quickly. If we can take Don down really quick, I'm going to just show these articles. Without human rights sanctions, the world is normalizing China's genocide of Uyghurs. China's repression of Uyghurs extends beyond borders, report says. You may not know it, but you support genocide against the Uyghurs. This is a common narrative from the mainstream media. It's a common narrative from our elected officials. And now the Republicans, and I've said this you were there at the Rage Against the War Machine. I said, don't think you're going to stop a war against, Ukraine over here. Stop this war against Russia in Ukraine, and then go over to Taiwan and start messing around with Beijing. And I've been scared of that, even more scared about the situation that's going on in Ukraine and Russia. I mean, a war with China? That's crazy. From what you've seen when your travels in China, was there a lot of oppression against the Uyghurs?
let me answer that charge, okay? Because that's the charge in essence of genocide, of oppression, and rounding up in concentration camps, etc. And I'll use the language of political science, since this was a scientific study. It's bullshit, okay? It's total bullshit. The Uyghurs, for example, in Urumqi, just to envision a map of China, it looks like the United States. So people that are familiar with the map of the United States, Urumqi is about where Seattle or Portland, Oregon are, up in the top northwest corner. Mm-hmm. We went from Urumqi to Dunhuang, which is about where Salt Lake City is, or Denver, like in that part of the country. Then we went to Xi'an. It's spelled Xi''an, and that's about where Chicago is. And then we went to Nanjing, which we used to call Nanking here. And a lot of Chinese restaurants still has that. That's about where Memphis may be, somewhere between Memphis and Atlanta. And then to Beijing, which is about where New York, Boston, Boney was.
So you went west all the way you went from the west side all the way to the east, West China. A lot of people understand Xinjiang is where a lot of people think West China is. You started around that area of West China. Yeah. And then you moved all the way across the country going east. So you witnessed a lot of the... Okay, please continue. Go ahead.
Okay, so we stayed in each case in the Muslim quarter in these communities. Now, first let me clarify something, because I didn't understand until I got there. When you hear the Muslim quarter, it evoked to me almost like, a Warsaw ghetto or something. That, wow, they herd them all up into a section of the city or whatever. Or like in the United States for, up until about 10 minutes ago, and in a lot of places it's still like that. You had black sections and Puerto Rican sections and segregation in terms of housing and employment and everything. So I had that picture. I also know that the Latin Quarter in Paris, for example, is not that at all. And I know the French Quarter in New Orleans is not that at all. I've been to both. So I got there, with these conflicting images, and I found out, in fact, these cities, this is the old town in the city. And the cities, they're ancient. The people so people were trading from, say, Lisbon, Portugal, all the way over in the western part of Europe, all the way to Beijing in the eastern part of China, and climbing over. When you go through the Himalayas, for example, as just one of the hurdles you have to go through. So you're going with elephants like Hannibal, or camels like they use still in some places. Cynthia went on a camel ride, for example, on a sand-up mountain in Dunhuang. And they've made their way back and forth, and a lot of them stopped in this place or that place, in these cities, locations, like, hey, wow, this place is kind of cool. Let's stay here. And they settled it. And so the core of these cities, which are now, have population anywhere from 700,000 to 2.5, 3 million people. They're huge now. The core of these cities, is the old town. Like I saw, for example, in Tripoli, you had the old town. The old town is like 1,000 years old. In some of the cities of Europe, if you go to Krakow, for example, the old town there is very old. There's a statue of Copernicus. I think it was cast when he was still alive. Okay, so so we get there, and we're staying in the Muslim Quarter, which also, by the way, has not just two-story buildings built in the 16th century or whatever. It also has modern buildings. Like if you were in an American city like Manhattan, you have the Village and Little Italy, and Chinatown, and you also have Midtown Manhattan and all the stuff that they built in the East and West Village, in the last 30, 40 years. The city is like that, but there's an intact center. So we went in there. Mosque, there are big mosques in each of these cities. One last little diversion here. One of the myths here is that they're shutting down mosques. They, invoke the imagery of the Bolsheviks, shutting down churches in 1918 or whatever, or maybe Cardinal Mindszenty being arrested by the Hungarian, secret police in 1949 or whatever the hell that was. So we get there, and these mosques are, they're polished gold and, glinting and gleaming and all of this, and they're well maintained, and there are people there all the time. Just, activity in these things. They're vibrant. So we started walking around first with we found a Chinese woman who was in her late 20s who wanted to practice her English. When she heard us speak English in one of the airports, she had the summer off. Okay, she's in her 20s, and she's not a party official or any of that stuff. She's just a Chinese woman in her 20s who works half the year and travels the other half the year. So she went around and translated for us. We wanted to find a halal restaurant. We thought that was one place to find Muslims, and in fact, they were owned. All the ones we went to were owned by either Uyghurs or Kazakhs.
Wait, so Uyghurs own businesses over there? That's not what we're told over here. We're told
no. So you go into Urumqi, for example, into the Muslim Quarter. All right, I'm just going to make the blanket statement first and then detail it. The Uyghurs are as oppressed in China as white people of means are in the United States. I'm talking like Scarsdale, Malibu, like that. That's how oppressed they are.
That's some serious oppression, man.
I know it is. Well, wealth has its drawbacks, I guess. I don't know. We were in this one part of the quarter where it was, the buildings were older, like in Little Italy or whatever, or in maybe Bronx, Little Italy even. They looked like they were built 200-300 years ago. They've been fixed up some. Maybe that could use a little paint there or whatever. Everything was clean though, and everything was in good repair. Yeah. So,
but you also said there was modern buildings as well as the older buildings too, as well. And okay,
and also the cities these old towns are surrounded by brand new modern cities, luxury high-rise apartments filled by working people.
Okay.
I'm talking the guy who works behind the counter in the restaurant.
Did you ask these people if they were Uyghurs? And I mean, how did you know?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, so, are you a Uyghur? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's cool.
No. What's your ethnicity? We asked, and they told us.
Okay, cool.
We didn't lead them. So.
I hear
anyway,
you. Thank you.
We're in the old part of the old town, and we went into one coffee shop that was owned by a family, and the family was there. The husband was cooking bacon stuff and baking things, and the wife was cleaning because it was kind of the end of the day. There was a sister of the wife. And an old man, it was, I think, the father of the husband, and a couple of people came in and out while we were there, and we spoke with them. And after Cynthia did the questionnaire part, I asked them, and I have this somewhere on tape. It's not on what we're going to see today. But why exactly? I've seen these beautiful apartment buildings outside of town, and there's restaurants and nightclubs, and it's I would love to live there. And why are you staying here? And they was like, we own this. My father owned it. My grandfather owned it. This is ours. And I thought to myself, I wish I had that sense of place and belonging that these folks have. And that was common, that attitude.
Okay. Here's a question for you. And I got two questions. Did you witness any oppression of any Uyghurs anywhere when you were there? I mean, you guys went to a lot of places because, I mean, this is the main argument that the mainstream media has, is that China oppresses the Uyghurs in their own country. We have to watch them. They're going to try to oppress us over here and put a stranglehold on us economically or do whatever they can do, buy up our land, buy up our resources, control academia, hypnotize us, all that stuff. Did you witness any type of oppression of any ethnicity, including the Uyghurs, when you were in China?
No, that's the point I'm trying to make. Look, you've been to Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, all these places that are supposedly police states, and so I've been to Cuba, I've been to Libya, I've been to Soviet Union and Russia after the Soviet Union, and Ukraine, and Poland, and Czech, all these places that were supposedly police states in 1990 also, while they were still supposedly police states. And in Tripoli, and I went there with Cynthia in 2008 before Obama blew it up. And we were staying in two different hotels, a quarter mile apart, and across a 6-lane highway on the shore. We went there for their food was way better than the food in our hotel. So we walked down there, me and 11 other guys, every day, and we'd have to stand there for like a half an hour to try to get across the street without getting killed because everybody was driving 1.5, 2 times the speed limit. We went looking for a cop in this police state, and there wasn't a single cop there.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the Soviet Union, and it's the same in Russia. The police have a much lighter touch than they do in the United States, where you're downtown Manhattan is standing on corners with friggin' machine guns.
Yeah.
So, no, I didn't see any evidence of oppression at all. I didn't see any people in chain gangs. I didn't see anybody getting hauled off by the secret police. It was not even imaginable, because what I did see was cities full, and no matter where I went, warm, loving people, open, willing to talk. Everyone that could speak English wanted to practice, on us, because they could tell, who we were. Between Cynthia and I, they could tell. And very, extremely generous. This woman that we ended up hanging out with for most of the trip, Dench, I couldn't buy anything. We'd go into a restaurant or a taxi or this and that. I brought a bunch of cash, and I bought a bunch of, and they, we say yuan, by the way. They say yen. Y-U-E-N, they pronounce yen.
Yeah.
And I bought like a wad of it, ugly American or whatever, so I could pay for stuff. And she wouldn't, she had this little, they use almost no cash.
Yeah.
They have, the cell phone has all this, it's a we pay or some damn thing.
Yeah.
If she had that thing, I'd be sitting here getting ready to get out of the cab. I'm reaching in my pocket, and she and the cabbie are like waving their phones at each other. And she says, no, it's taken care of. They're not just her. Everybody we met was like that. We go into a restaurant to talk to people. Yeah. It's on the house. They're bringing us stuff. We stopped in a thing called a yurt. In a Kazakh area up in the mountains. It's like a huge tent, like a real teepee, only it's more dome shaped. And it was a restaurant owned by a Kazakh family that settled there. Great grandparents came there or whatever. Gorgeous. We sit down in the place. It's like we're sitting in their home basically, and they feed us. And she comes in and plays music to us. And after everything, sits down and just wants to talk about, this is what's your life like. This is what my life is like. Not at all like, oh my God, I better not say the wrong thing or I'm going to get whisked off to a concentration camp.
Okay. It's first off, you mentioned the We app, and that's something that will kind of raise some hairs on people's back over there, because a lot of people are very nervous that, that's about control. It's about track and trace. But, whatever the case may be, a lot of people are fearful that Elon wanted to buy Twitter, turn it into X, so he can do the same thing with that app. But let's table that for a second. Do the people in China that you met, do they know the way the mainstream media tells a story of oppression with the government against its people? I know we have a footage to look at here, but give us a little insight really quick onto your opinions about that.
So we were in this restaurant in Nanjing. That's what this clip is from. And there's Cynthia. That woman in the middle is Dench. She's our person that ended up volunteering as our guide and our companion. And she was my best buddy. She took me drinking too. and so we had a very nice conversation with a couple family members and employees there about how their business works, how their life is, what happens, what do you like about China, what don't you like about it, your local government, your national government, the world's situation, etc. And they were very friendly and open about all of this. And there was one woman, who I think was a sister-in-law of somebody or something, and she was very nice, but all of a sudden she just turned and she was like, she didn't use this language, but I'll convey the emotional content of it. What the fuck is wrong with the people in your country? What are they making up all this shit about us for?
Yeah. Did you explain to them why they do that they want to manufacture?
Yeah. Cynthia does. That's like in the last 5-7 minutes of that clip that I
we probably won't get that deep into it, but let's listen to a little bit really quick. This is Don with Cynthia McKinney in China talking to some people about the conditions and this whole mentality that the CIA is used to press in our mainstream media, and they go along with it, right? Like they have talked about boycotting buying products from Xinjiang because they're used for, they said they're made by Uyghur slave labor. And I mean, this is the shit they're telling you. But we get people like, okay, it's different when Danny Haifong or Carl Zah, who've been on my shows before, and they talk about it. When you go, when Jose Vega, who just got back, with Cynthia McKinney goes, and you guys come report back, this stuff is powerful because it pushes directly against the narrative. All those nut jobs at the GOP debate we're talking about on that stage just the other day. That's where they're coming from. They're coming from a point of view that the Chinese government is very oppressive. They want to control things, and they're trying to kill us from the inside. They're trying to get back at us for the what was it called? The opioid wars, or the
opium wars.
The opium wars with the fentanyl wars now. So it's crazy. Let's play a little of this clip and see what we got over here.
Go ahead.
Do you pay attention to politics any at all?
你对政策啊，那些你关注吗？国家政治是很少有。No time.
They generally don't.
Yeah.
So, for example, yesterday where were we yesterday? Xi'an. The ladies said to us that they are free, but their elected officials are not free because they make rules for them. So I was wondering if there's a similar kind of situation here, but since they don't pay attention to politics, they really wouldn't know.
You know, the youth always feel not free.
But they said they.
So what are they saying right there? What are they asking exactly when they say that the politicians aren't free?
Okay, yeah, and what you're seeing basically is Cynthia McKinney executing, a study, and regular folks of a variety of, interest in politics talking about their view. No, I don't really follow it. The person to the right of the man who's scratching his chin or whatever he's doing there is very interested in politics, and that's the piece at the end. I apologize for the audio. I haven't had a chance to filter it. It was a difficult situation. We can't use the usual audio things for it because of the fact that it's a questionnaire.
Okay.
They don't want to bias the study. So,
but what are they saying about when they said your politicians aren't free, but the people are free?
Yeah. So we're free, and the politicians belong to us. And if they want to be politicians, they have things they can't do that all the rest of us can do, because they're acting as our agents in essence, and we're the principals. Principals can act any way they please, but agents have to act at the direction of the principal. That's what they're saying. So something that we don't have as a concept here.
Yeah, in other words, it's the opposite way around. We're not free over here, and they get away with murder, bloody murder. Our politicians, the laws aren't for them; they're for us. It seems like the opposite over there in China.
It is the opposite. That's what they're saying. Okay, so, I'm not familiar with the Chinese criminal code or any of that, but I do know something about what happens there, and what they're saying though is what you're saying.
So, if in fact people like yourself go and report this, we get some news from people like Jose Vega, right, and we find out that it's completely hogwash what our mainstream media has been telling us. There is no oppression of the Uyghurs. You know what I'm saying? They're pretty much acclimated into society. And we kind of blow the whistle on this whole situation. And we can no longer, our mainstream media can't hold a narrative that these people, Muslims in China, are oppressed. What's the next step in your mind that the government does and the mainstream media does to keep the war machine online to go to war with China? Because it seems like they desperately want a war. At least the conservatives, watching that stage the other day with them, they're so anti-China, it's ridiculous. What do they do now once you guys blow the whistle on what it's really like in China?
Well, first of all, we have, I'm glad we're doing this here. There's an audience that can't be ignored here. That people are, used to being exposed to things that are not in the mainstream media. And there's a good sized audience, a good number of people like that see this. So, telling the truth about it is actually going to be heard, and that's a real important part of the battle.
Yeah.
The government can respond in several ways, and you have to ask yourself what's driving them in the first place. You have the example today or yesterday in the House of Representatives of the Republicans, a majority of the Republicans in a vote, challenging a chunk of the Ukraine aid that was in the budget as part of the budget battle. It's not all of it. It's about 10 or 15% of what's been squirreled away. It's like 300 million out of the 2.4 billion or something. But it's something. And they went on the record saying, basically, we don't want to send anything over there. And so you have the Republicans saying, well, let's not have a war with Russia. Kind of. They're whispering that. But let's have a war with China. And then all of the Democrats voted to fund the war on Ukraine. They're saying, let's have the war with Russia. And they criticize the Republicans for being bellicose about China. Although they do provocative things like Pelosi going to
She got to China first there, Don. I mean, let's not, I don't, she got to China, she got to Taiwan first before the rest of the Republicans got there. So to even say, it's a bigger problem when it comes to China because the Democrats seem like they're on board too. Please continue.
Well, but the real thing is if you look at a map and contemplate the U.S. war to conquer the rest of the world, Russia and China are right next to each other. They've declared a strategic partnership. They've had the example of the U.S. going after first that one, then that one, then that one. Now they're going after Russia and trying to, mess with China, and they've been doing that since Obama was president. Yeah. So, what you're looking at is no matter how it manifests by this group of American politicians saying, let's go get Russia and be nice to China, and this group saying, let's be nice to China and go get Russia, really, the people on the other end of that bullshit know they're coming for all of us, and we have to deal with it that way. And so I think from this side, the strategy they can play is either to try to suppress what comes at what we're doing, for example, and counter it with a massive pile of propaganda, or just shift tactics and have them all agree, well, let's go have a nice meeting with Xi Jinping for now and get on the bandwagon for Russia. And once we take Russia, we'll be able to take China anyway. They have the same goal. We're just talking about tactics.
Yeah. So is it fair to say, and this is the last question from what comes to China, and we'll get on to Ukraine, is it fair to say, though, that in Taiwan, it's not going to be the same as it was in Ukraine? In other words, in Ukraine, when it came to Western Ukraine, there was a anti-Russian group there, especially when you talk about, Azov Battalion and all the other groups that were there too as well. Before the Azov too. I forgot, what was it? Svoboda was one of the groups too as well?
Yes.
So you had these anti-Russian this anti-Russian contingency in Western Ukraine. Is Taiwan have any of those elements there? I know there's a lot of people who declare a lot of independence from Beijing and they're Western friendly, but it seems like there's a lot of pro-China, pro-Beijing people within Taiwan as well. What's it like in Taiwan as compared to the Ukraine? Will they be able to pull off the same thing in Taiwan that they did in Ukraine, meaning the war machine of the West?
I haven't been to Taiwan yet, so I can't say from direct observation. I did speak to a number of people in China, not just men on the street people, but people that are involved in stuff and have know some things, understanding they may have a bias. I know the history. I went to see terracotta soldiers in Xinjiang. These basically terracotta statues, thousands of them, all with different faces and stuff that were made to guard an emperor 2,500 years ago, I think, or something. China is a very old civilization, and Taiwan has always been part of China. Yeah. Taiwan not being part of China is the result of the Chinese Revolution, taking China and all of the forces backed by the United States escaping to that island. Yeah. And China then turning inward to rebuild itself. And now they're at a point where they want a rapprochement. China doesn't want to eat Taiwan. China wants to participate with Taiwan as a family, because they are. They're a family for thousands of years. The sentiment in Taiwan, from my understanding of it, and some direct observation through reading media and seeing conversations in Taiwan media and business journals about this, is that how could you not, being right next to China, being actually Chinese, and being in business, not want to do business with China on partner terms. When you have a 1.5 billion person market, the second richest or the richest economy on the planet, by depending on which measure, and one that's growing faster than any other market and any other economy in the world.
Yeah.
People in Taiwan have a very direct self-interest in finding a peaceful solution to the political contradiction, and many of the most powerful people in China are seeking that.
Yeah.
The United States has its quislings there, like they have in Georgia right now, like they have in Ukraine right now, like they have been trying to install in Venezuela. Basically, they have their Juan Guaidos everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think Taiwan itself knows its future is with China because it is China.
I know that there's going to be an election there soon, correct? And I believe the pro-Beijing party is leading in the polls.
That's what I've heard. And those are our polls, too.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. So, but America, when it comes to elections, we love to get involved. So we'll see. We'll keep a close eye on there.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Tampa, Boca Raton, Orlando, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois, Indianapolis, and Levittown, New York. Wow, that's a lot of dates. See you there.